Yeah, what a player, and what a great person as well. Incredibly sad story with Kev. But tonight we're going to do our best to honour him and the foundation. So I'm going to bring to the stage 4 absolute legends, 3 Arsenal legends and a Premier League legend of this parish that started out here back in the day. Look, without further ado, let's bring them up. Alan Smith, give a big, warm welcome, please, to Alan Smith, Paul Davis, Lee Dixon, and Andy Cole. I'll sit here. I'll go here. Let's start with you, Smudger. You were the first team striker when Kev was banging in goals for fun in the Arsenal youth team. Was it 59 in a season? How did it feel, sort of knowing that this young whippersnapper by the name of Kevin Campbell was sort of coming up on the rails? How did you feel, and how was he welcomed into the first team?
Yeah, I mean, word always reaches the first team that there's this young buck pulling up trees in the youth team. You talk about it in the canteen after training. Then finally he's invited over to train with the first team, so everybody's obviously excited and, you know, intrigued to know exactly who this player is, what's he like, what kind of a player he is. And I always remember, you know, if George says, get Kev over here, you know, we want him to work against the back 4. I always remember Baldy and Tony going, oh no, not Kev, you know, because they were going to have to work hard on that particular day, because he was such a strong, quick and enthusiastic player in those early days. So it was hard work for those boys just when they wanted a quiet morning. But yeah, he fitted in really quickly, but he had that personality. I mean, I'll never forget that beaming smile and that lovely way about him. One of those lads you couldn't dislike. And he worked hard at his game. George got hold of him, and, you know, tactically you had to adhere to what the gaffer wanted, and he took that on board. He was quite raw when he first came, but he soon sharpened up his game. I mean, I'd played up front with Merce for most of my career up until that point, Groves a little bit, and then Merce moved over to the left, and then Kev came to the fore, and he was a great lad to play with, you know. We built up a really good understanding, and such a nice lad, you know, in general, a lovely lad. Yeah,
I think Kev got on brilliantly well. We were really close on the pitch, more on the pitch than off the pitch, because you talked about him being raw at first, Smudge, and that was probably the key to our relationship, because he was raw, he wanted to learn, he wanted to come in and do his best, and he used to ask me what I needed as a fullback. You know, if he was playing on the right-hand side, which he often did when we played in Europe, we changed the system to 4-3-3, and Kev would play in front of me, and he used to look behind, he goes, what do you need? And I go, I need you to do all my running, I need you to kick that spindly winger over there, and then help Baldy out if he needs a bit of help, and then get on the other end and score a goal.
And was he obedient?
So, yeah, because he didn't really know any different. He just go, okay then. So I got him where I wanted him, and he was such a lovely receiver of information, because he just like beamed that smile back at you, and he just go, okay, Dicko, and I go, wow. Well, Ray Parlour never did that. He told me to off. But he was just, right, let's do that. Let's do what you want us to do. And I said, if you do this, because I was still learning my trade, but we developed a rapport between us where, you know, we understood that if we all did, and I think there's the rest of the team as well, we all did our jobs, we got half a chance of, under George's tutelage, to actually win something.
Well, yeah, it worked out pretty well, didn't it? You won plenty of stuff. Andy, obviously you moved on. Explain to everyone sort of how you two gelled and what sort of relationship you guys had.
Well, me and Kevin had a very good relationship, considering Kev's 2 years older than me. I was fortunate to play one Youth Cup game with him when Arsenal went on to go win the Youth Cup. And I think our relationship was formed from then. You know, I joined as a YT, and he just took me under his arms. You know, as a professional, which he was a young pro then. And I mean, all he ever wanted from me was to try and be the best that I could do. I could sit down and have a conversation with him about anything, and You know, he'd be always there, give me information. I always love Kevin's energy. Like I said, I'm very, very fortunate to have spent time with him. You know, having his energy, having, when I wasn't on duties, you know, going around his flat in Enfield, he used to pick me up, take me to training, you know, and wait around for me if I wasn't on jobs or anything like that, drop me back. Kev was established then, you know, so we was never competing. I wanted to actually be like him because he had an unbelievable goal-scoring record in the youth team. You know, and I remember Rice, he always used to talk about the goals that Kevin got in the youth team, and I was saying to myself, yeah, I can do that. And then I actually realised I couldn't do it because Kevin was before his time when it comes to youth team football. And I think that was one of the reasons Arsenal let me go in the end, because they said I wouldn't score enough goals. So,
well, yeah,
Kevin
you got
went
there
on
in
to
the
do
end, didn't you?
Yeah, Kevin went on to do his thing, and I went on to do mine. But like I said, I always had so much respect for him because what he gave me when I was younger was absolutely phenomenal.
Paul, I know that you kind of knew Kev before anyone here really tonight in regards to Arsenal. Tell us about your relationship.
I knew Kevin because we grew up in South London. I grew up in Stockwell. He grew up in Brixton. For those of you who don't know, that's about a mile apart. But we didn't actually know each other at that time. So I'm 5 or 6 years older than Kevin.
And the rest.
And the rest.
Sorry. All right, they said it at the same
Almost
time.
like we
planned that.
rehearsed that.
Yeah.
Yes, Pops.
Yeah, so I was at the club and Kevin came to the club and we kept on, as Smudge said, we kept on hearing about this name, Kevin Campbell, scoring goals, and began to realise that he was from South London, and I thought, who's this Kevin Campbell? So once he got into the first team and we recognised his ability and his personality, I took him under my wing a bit because being from South London, being from the same ethnic background, I kind of knew what he might be going through in terms of the mindset. And same with Andy, you know, with all the sort of lads from Caribbean backgrounds, I felt as though I wanted to be connected to them. So always made a special beeline for those guys, and they came to me as well. So Kev and I built up a kind of a relationship based, I think, really around our culture. And I think Kevin brought something to our team that I don't think many other teams had at that time. He brought his culture in. And I think that made us such a stronger outfit altogether. And so, yeah, Kevin and I go back a long way. I'm so thankful that I've, been a part of his life. Davo, all right? So that's my nickname, Davo. And it came from, there's a guy, those of you that are old enough will remember a singer in 50s, 60s called Harry Belafonte. Some of you remember him, yeah. No, these guys say they don't.
Too young.
He was an American singer, a black American singer, and he had a song back in those days called Deo, Deo. Daylight come and I want to go home. Well, Kevin came in one day and started singing that to me because my surname is Davis, so Dale or Davis, a bit of a nickname, and that stuck. And to this day, these guys call me, but they wouldn't know the reason.
So hang on a minute, I need to get this right in my head because you said this story earlier. So for all the time I've known you, I've called you Davo.
Yeah.
And it's Deo.
Well, no. No, the song is Deo.
Yeah, I know.
But Kevin kind of
That's what I thought.
Kevin twisted it for Davo. Deo. You know, that's the
I
twist.
thought I got it wrong.
Yeah, no. It's Davo, but it came from the song Deal. But that's where it came from. And Kevin came in, and it's stuck to this day. And people call me Davo. They wouldn't know that it came from that song. Kevin created it. And that was that.
I now have to call you Deo. I'm going to call you Deo now.
It's Davo, but it came from Deo. I'll tell you the second nickname a little bit later on in this show. But Kevin, yeah, he was creative. He brought us together. He brought in the cultural thing. I think people overlook. You know, he kind of was able to connect the differences between us. He kind of sort of said, yeah, we're all the same, but we're not all the same really because we've got different cultures. And he kind of brought that in.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big part of our success, the cultural thing and the understanding of each other and getting to know each other.
It did change then when Kevin
So that's
came
a
in,
massive thing. I think even now, today, I think, you look at the team today, I think the teams that have got that kind of mix and are able to bring, to be fair to George, he cultivated that as well.
Yeah, but you had a lot of black players in the first team, a lot of you South London boys that had come through anyway. But what did he do specifically to help change that culture then?
Yeah, I think Kevin wasn't afraid to show his culture in an environment sometimes that it's hard to show your culture sometimes. And I think Kevin was able to just be himself and show his culture, and I think these guys would have learned some stuff that I wasn't able to perhaps convey to them because I wasn't able to do that as Kevin. I think Kevin had such an amazing personality to be able to do that. Somebody that can do that, you just got to recognise him as someone that's sort of different to everybody else.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you felt that, Colin.
Kev had that energy. I mean, Kev was an individual. He'd walk in a room and his energy would take the room over. You know, he'd do something crazy and then the room... You know what he was like, just full of beans, and but it's very, very difficult to talk about an individual when he's not here, because he deserved his flowers when he was here. You know, he just had so much charisma. Just for me personally, everything about him was just special. He was never scared to go out his way for anybody or give anyone advice, crack a joke, or just be Kevin. And that was the entertainment's manager. You know, he was a special, special person.
Later on, I think now is a great time actually to bring in a very special guest tonight, VVIP, I would suggest, former Arsenal vice chairman, David Dein.
And it's a great pleasure to be here tonight, and particularly with legends like this. I must say, it gives me, I always consider myself as a little bit of a father figure, and to be with some of my children here, it is so wonderful.
Mine is a tenner.
Do you take a credit card? Yeah, so I've got several stories about Kevin. And I think there was a journalist that referred to Kevin as a combination of finesse and power shrouded in a big personality. And I think that says it all. And I can remember when I joined the board in 1983, and I always used to go and see the youth team in the morning, and then afterwards go and see the first team in the afternoon. So when I used to go and see the first team at London Colney, invariably I'd stand next to Pat Rice, who was the coach. And when Kevin had the ball, Pat would go like this: beep, 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 beep. Kevin was like a truck going through the traffic. Everybody got out of his way because of his power and strength. So that was Kevin's power. And then there was one wonderful occasion after the Hillsbury disaster in 1989. We had to rebuild the stadium. And when we were going to rebuild the North Bank, I had this crazy idea of camouflaging all of the scaffolding and building work with a mural. The stadium was going to open on the Saturday, and we were playing Coventry. On the Friday morning, all the boys were training on the pitch at Highbury. So I went down onto the pitch, and as they were coming off after training, Kevin Campbell came up to me and said, "Mr. Dein, there's none of my brothers in that mural." And I looked at the mural and I said, "Kevin, you are so right. Wow, I'm sorry about that, hugely. We'll do something about that immediately," and we did. We had to put it right. But Kevin was only 20 at the time, but he had the sense, the common sense, to come up to me and tell me that. And in fact, the following day, we lost heavily to Coventry. I think it was 4-1. The game was so bad, 9 people in the mural walked out.
Thank you very much. David Dein, everybody.
Thank you.
He brought something different, didn't he? He'd been out on loan to Leyton Orient and Leicester, I think, where he'd learnt his trade to a certain extent, and he came back and he was ready. And he had an ability to score not just goals, but important ones. He was one of those that could step onto the big stage and perform. which speaks volumes for his character. But yeah, that run in 1991, there was the Villa game, wasn't there, when I think David Platt went in goal. I think he scored. You scored on that day, Dave. It was that unusual. It was a good goal as well, actually. But yeah, I remember going back to '89 when he was at the club, and he was stood behind the goal at Anfield in that blazer, and Davo, not that exact blazer, but Davo was with him, wasn't he?
The Anfield one, yeah.
Yeah, Anfield, yeah. Gus Caesar was there, stood behind the goal. So he hung around, and he was there for the second title season, which was obviously brilliant. We just lost the one game. And it was a celebration at the end, that Man U game that we'd won the title just before. There's a party atmosphere. I think Kev had one of those wigs on, didn't he?
Yeah,
we all went out and messing about. George wasn't happy about it, even though we just won the league. We were all Mickey Thomas had some kind of wig on.
I went in goal.
You went in goal
in the warm up. Yeah.
In the warm up, yeah.
But just going back, when somebody's talking about Kevin, you're on the outside listening in, it just brings up all sorts of visions of him as a player, and you're talking about how well he did, and I think a lot's set. We certainly talked about numbers earlier when we did the podcast. We were on about, oh yeah, he's a 6 and he's an 8, and I mean, there's so much talked about that nowadays, about what position he's a 10, he's a dropping 10, he's a false 9, everyone's like, where's he? Kevin was one of those players you could literally tell him to play anywhere. And I'm pretty sure he filled in for me at right back a few times when I was out of position, definitely. But he was a centre forward. He could play on his own. He could play, as Smudge said, he'd play as a 2 when we played a lot of the time 4-4-2. But he'd also drop down. He'd find himself in that 10 position, as they like to call it now. But he's also a brilliant winger, and he would scare fullbacks to death when I used to just give him the ball. I didn't have to do anything at the back. I was very fortunate to play with David Rocastle before him, who was an absolute dream to play with. Same sort of character, would do exactly the same sort of questioning. What do you need me to do? Where do you need me to be? And he just went and did it. And then Kevin used to do that as well. And to be able to get the ball at fullback and not even think about any other ball and just give it Kevin's feet. And you could see the left back just go, oh God. Gee, I've got him coming at me, because he wasn't a trickster, was he? He wasn't one of those who had a trick. You just basically see the fear in the fullback shorts and just knock it past him, and the fullback go, and he just run past him, and he got anywhere near him, his arm had come out, and he just brush him aside. He was strong as an ox, and he'd deliver a great ball into Smudge normally. Yeah,
absolutely.
I can't add anything more. Yeah. Can't add anything more really to what the guys have said. I remember Kev as being big, strong, but mentally he was always up for the challenge against opposition. He would always say to us if we were struggling or things weren't going well as a team, he'd shout across to us, boys, just get it in the mixer. If you get it in the mixer, I'll just do the rest. And that's what and so what he meant was just get it in the box and he would sort out the rest. And that's what often he did. He knew he was stronger than any of his opponents, and he knew they were fearful of him. Yeah. And he'd always play on it.
Do you know
but
what?
He was such a great teammate as well, because there's times where he was fighting for positions and he was out of the team. When Righty came, competition for places was stiff, and he was out of the team a lot, and he kept on. He was still a teammate, but he wanted to take that spot, and I remember him always wanting to get in.
Righty loved playing with him, didn't he?
Righty did, yeah. And I think Kevin brought so much in terms of that team spirit, because when he was out.
Yeah, his work ethic was mad as well.
Say again?
He's worked so hard, Kevin.
Yeah.
On the pitch. Hell of a lot of work.
I remember when he'd been around the first team for a little bit, and he'd obviously signed a decent contract. Nothing brilliant, because George was in charge and Mr. Dein.
Mr. Dein.
And he was so proud he bought this Mercedes 220 coupe, and I'd got one. It was one of those where you shut the door and the old the seatbelt comes out on the side.
Oh, hello.
It was great. And he was so chuffed with that. I remember, because you remember things like that. You've worked so hard to get there, and then you're earning decent money, and you can buy a nice car. He loved his clothes and that,
David O'Leary was still in his Ford Sierra from 15 years ago.
He had a blue Ford Sierra, 15 years old.
Oh, dear.
Still got it, I think.
Just thinking about that, getting it in the mixer. I only played with Kev a handful of times, and that completely resonated with me because I was a winger. He just used to tell me, get it in the mixer. Absolutely brilliant. You won stuff. You won stuff together, didn't you? As a team, you won the league title 89, 91. You got the two cups in 93, the Cup Winners' Cup in 94. What are your memories of? Let's start with the Parma, because I want to know about that. Because for me, that's an epic Arsenal victory in Europe. The last time, of course, Arsenal won a European trophy, which I can't believe. I was there that night. I wasn't in the squad, but I was there behind the goal with the other youth team players and whatnot. And it was a proper backs to the wall effort, wasn't it? Parma was supposed to win that game. There's stories about George Graham winding you lot up about what the win bonus was for Parma players. And
we weren't supposed to win it. We got there by default, and then all of a sudden, we were playing against it. They were a bloody good side, by the way. They were, and it was probably, I would say that.
Ginola played that game. Ginola.
No, the Parma game. He was
Parma.
semi-final.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You're thinking of Zola.
Oh yeah, Zola. You were thinking
Zola.
of.
No.
Zola played, didn't he?
Ginola. Ginola played in the.
Ginola played in the semi.
Yeah, he scored in Paris, didn't he? Yeah.
That's when.
You were marking him, no?
Yeah.
I remember that goal actually because Baldy and Tony.
No. I'm not having that. I wasn't.
Okay, I'll let you come back. The right honourable gentleman. Do you want to reply to that? No.
No, I was going to tell a story you're probably going to tell, but I'll let you tell it. Go on.
No, Ginola was giving Baldy and Tony were giving Ginola stick all that first half, and then near post corner he's just glanced one in, and he's gone to celebrate, and then he's thought, oh no, I've got to go back and give Baldy these two centre halves some stick. So he did, didn't he? Yeah. He did a reverse and gave them plenty.
It was like, that was like the scene out of Life of Brian when they're watching the Prophet, and he calls him Big Nose because Baldy kept looking at him and goes, all right, Big Nose. And he kept, and I said, he's a professional footballer, Baldy. Why are you calling him names? And then he scored. He
picked on the wrong player, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, Baldy picking on Ginola for his looks is quite something, isn't it?
And our special guest, Steve Bold.
But yeah, I mean, there was. I still don't know how you won that game. I mean,
literally, I was just going to say that it was. I'd say that the most together performance, not the team obviously, but it's teams within teams, and we were very proud of the 1-0 to the Arsenal, trying to keep clean sheets. So that the back four and the goalkeeper, I've never been under that amount of pressure in any game I've ever played in. And it was just like the Alamo. And the amount of chances or near chances they had and last-ditch tackles, I gave 2 penalties away. Absolute stonewallers. How they didn't get given, I'll never know. But the referee seemed to be on our side. But it was just a brilliant team. That epitomised everything about that George Graham team that night.
I remember going out. Do you remember training the night before when you'd always train for half an hour, whatever, on the pitch the night before? And they went out first. We went out first and did our bit, and they were waiting on the sideline. We just got our normal training gear on, but Italian teams, as always, absolutely immaculate, and we've trudged off and a bit sweaty and that, and they've looked at us as if it was something on the bottom of the shoe, didn't they? But so that we didn't take kindly to that. And there was also the podium, the winners' podium, and we looked at it and it got Parma on it. I thought, well, that's a bit strong.
That was the night before.
I know we're second favourites, but, little did we know that it had got Arsenal on the other side. They were just going to turn it round, whoever won. But, you look at the replay of that game, and you're right, Lee. I mean, it was incredible how we did win it, but it was down. Obviously, I was the hero of the night. That goes without saying. But, no, it was down to the back five. Tony says they were at their peak at that time, and yeah, he rode your luck. But I mean, what a back five it was. Dave Seaman had injections in his ribs, hadn't he? And amazing rearguard performance.
See, this annoys me a little bit because they talk about the back five.
What about the midfield?
Who's in front of the back five?
Yes, Pops. Well, that night, hardly anybody.
What was that? I missed that.
That night, hardly anybody. We're on our own.
Well, the midfield that night was really sketchy because we had some really young ones. We had Steve Moreau.
Ian Selly.
Selly, yeah. Both young kids, and I was the oldest one of them. I was in...
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a really young midfield, and in the first 20 minutes,
First 20 minutes, first 90 minutes.
I would say the first 25 minutes, they were really, the shots were coming in from everywhere. I was thinking, this ain't going to last. We're not going to last for this. But we managed to see it through. And then, once we got to half-time, and then we just felt 1-0 to the Arsenal was going to work here. And it just said everything about us, because on paper, we should never have won that game. But what interests me, because I thought you were talking about the Paris Saint-Germain game.
Yeah.
You might come on to that one, but Kevin scored with his head that day, right?
Great cross.
A great cross by Lee Dixon.
Do I get an assist for the Palmer one as well?
No.
It was a sliced left foot chip to you.
A hopeful punt upfield.
Most of my passes were hopeful.
Yeah. But that goal, the Paris Saint-Germain goal was a cross from you and a glance there by Kevin.
It was actually. It was at
the near post. It was just beyond the near post.
I have to say.
Was you aiming for him?
It wasn't actually a great cross. It was a little bit behind him, and he did brilliantly to get.
Yeah.
You'll know that you kind of just give it one of them, and it sort of came off the side of his head. But yeah, it was a crap cross. But I'm taking.
The funny thing with that is the story about Kevin didn't like heading the ball when he was a kid, right? Did you know that? When he was a youngster, as a kid, he didn't want to head the ball. The story was that Pat Rice, his youth team coach, couldn't get him to head the ball. So he was like, I can't, I'll keep trying. So he decided that if I offer him £5 for every goal he scores with his head, I think that might work. And from then on, Kevin scored goals with it. It cost Pat a fortune. It's funny enough, he scored with his head that night.
Kevin bought his Mercedes then, didn't he?
I know you're a bit of a partner in crime on the nights out, Coley.
Me, no, I wasn't surprised. The way the first team players used to look after me was just unbelievable. There was times when obviously you watch them play from the paddock, you're going, and for some reason I always found myself in the dressing room. And as a YT player, I wasn't allowed to be in the dressing room, but I was always in the dressing room. Like the boys, come in, Coley. Just get me in the dressing room. And my experience of obviously that team then was, that's what you think about as a kid. You're watching those guys and you say to yourself, one day I want that to be me. I want to be involved in all this. And making my debut, obviously for Arsenal, coming on at Wembley, then making my league debut at Highbury against Sheffield United. And you get that little bit of taste. And I remember when Kev sorted out my first contract. Because I was having a few problems at the time. And I just decided to pack it in. I decided, Kev, I'm done. And I went missing. And I remember Kev saying, no, Coles, come on, we'll sort it out. And was it Keith Birkinshaw? And I remember Keith was getting involved. And I remember Kevin always saying to me, Coles, I'm going to be honest with you. You might as well talk to the bin. I'm like, why, Kev? Because at least you get rubbish. Because Keith Birkinshaw, Kev wasn't having him. He wasn't having him one bit. And like I said, he negotiated my contract. He said, right, we're going to try and get this, try and get that. And obviously I came back to Arsenal, we done that, and then just moved forward from there. So my memories of Kevin are just so fond, having a night out with him. Right, Coles, we're going into town. You take me into town, have something that we go out for the night. I'm like, shit, I'm a YT. Kev said, don't worry about it. I look after you, don't worry about it. And he was so generous as well. And I think he's the most generous man I've ever come across. Because as a YT, I'm on $29.50. If that £118 a month, God, I don't know how I did it. But Kev was the guy. Kev was the guy, you know, always took me out. We always had a laugh and joke. Like I said, those kind of things that I'll never forget, due to the fact that I know where obviously my career went after that and Kevin's career went after, but you never forget those things that happened at the start of my career.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant.
I do believe that it's that kind of mix that we had. As I mentioned it earlier on, I don't think you should underestimate the value of what that brought to us. And Kevin, I think, really was the essence of that. He brought his real, true self to the dressing room, and then I think that really allowed us to be ourselves, and we kind of bonded. And we've got to be, fair to George. I think George really enhanced that. He made that happen as well. So, yeah, I think that thing about bringing difference to something, and then there's building on that. Because we're all different. We come from different parts, so we've got different experiences. And
I think
he just brought it all together. I think that's
well as
George
the ability, Davo.
Yeah.
I think it was quite a tough side in '89. That was one of the things that George always used to say. He never wanted us to be bullied, to look after ourselves. He always used to talk about going north, and it's the southern softies coming up. We're not going to be bullied. They used to say we're going to do a John Wayne, get into town, hit them hard, and get out. And so we had that aspect to our character that, sometimes boiled over. You think of the old Trafford incident and that. But on top of that, physical toughness and mental toughness, there was obviously ability there as well. A team that, knew how to win matches. The back four was just in the early days.
Don't forget the midfield.
Great midfield. Mickey Thomas was a really good midfielder.
He was good, wasn't he, Mickey Thomas?
Kev Richardson, they put a shift in. But the 91 team, I think, was a better team, really, than the 89. It was more maturity about it. And obviously we won the league with room to spare. But, yeah, I think we had a winning mentality. He came from the boss and,
you're right. When I signed, it was all about what George was telling me, how the story would go. And he kept going on about this talent that the club had, the young talent that Davo was kind of like the pops of, the David Rocastles, Michael Thomas, all those guys coming through. That he said, I've got a bunch of young raw talent that are learning the game, and I've gone round the lower divisions and I've picked all you lot out as hungry. He always kept going on about desire and fire in your belly. It was pushed down our throats every day, and you had to earn the next shekel. It was kind of like he used to say to me, he used to go, if you do this, if you win me something, come back and see me next year. And I'm sure he said it to the rest of that. It's always, you've got to do something. I'll never forget.
They'll only give you a tenner pay rise.
Yeah,
though.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll never forget when I started to get a little bit. We won the league in '91, and I got in the England side, and I was rooming with Tony Dorigo, and we won the league in '91, and he was playing for Leeds, and they were like mid-table in the first division as it was then. And I was like, my contract was coming up at the end. I needed to speak to him. And so I went away on England duty, and I was rooming Tony, and I was kind of speaking to the PFA, trying to get an idea of what a league-winning fullback should be being paid, or what's my next contract. So I was like, and in those days, I don't know what it's like now, where the players never talked about their money. You never really got an idea. How much are you on was never a question. It was kind of like, I think, it was a taboo subject. So I'm in the room with him, and I'm kind of going, Tone, you're at Leeds, you're full-back. He was reserve left-back for England at Leeds. I was first choice right-back for England at the league champions. So I'm thinking I'm, obviously a bit more than him and a bit better than him. And I said to him, so Tone, what sort of money are you on at Leeds, And I think I was on 1,500 quid a week or something at Arsenal, and I was kind of going, I don't really know how to pitch it with George, and So I said, what sort of money are you on at Leeds? And he's lying on his bed, and he had his legs like that, and he was sort of watching the telly, and he just looked over, and I thought, I'm not going to get an answer. And he went, I'm on £5,000 a week. And I literally fucking spat my tea. I went, and he went, is that sort of money you're? And I said, yeah, similar sort of amount. I was fuming. We had a game to play. I think we got beat at Wembley. It's my fault or something, because I couldn't get my head around. So Thursday morning, I go back after the game, and I'm one of them straight into George. I said, George, can I have a word with you? And he goes, yeah, come in the office. Been away with England, have you? Because he used to get it all the time. And I sat down, he said, what's up with this? You know, we're talking about the contract. I said, Tony Dorigo's on £5,000 a week. And he went, oh. And I said, I'm on 1,500. I said, what? And he went, I'd never forget it. He did his tie up, because he's always like Davo. And he did his tie up like that, and he goes, go and play for f***ing Leeds then. And I went, and I was literally shocked. And then he went, oh, one more thing. And I went, what? He goes, shut the door on the way out. And that was it. That was George negotiating and making me hungry and trying to go, right, I was like, that was it.
This really resonates with me as well, on a much smaller scale. I remember, this probably won't mean anything to you, because I only had a little glimmer of first team action, but I went on the tour of Hong Kong and China.
Thankfully, I didn't go on this one.
You didn't go on that one? Okay. And Stuart Houston was there. He was the caretaker at the time, and he said, right, we're flying to China in the morning, so we don't want to go too crazy. We're in a bar. He said, I'll get the round in, one beer each, and then we'll all hop off to bed early night, and we'll fly to China in the morning. And so we had the pint, and then Stuart got up and left, and then I sort of got up with a couple of the other young lads, and it wasn't Smudger, but I think it was probably Baldy and the others, and they were like, whoa, what are you doing? Where are you going? And they said, we're just starting. And I'd say within 2 hours, Glenn Helder was playing the drums in the hotel bar. Everyone was lagging, and we went out, and I don't know whether you boys had prepared it, because I remember it was you, Smudge. I was really surprised. I came home about 3 a.m, and I went down to get on the bus to go to the airport about 7, and some of you boys were just walking in.
It sounds like Smudge.
There's a reason for that, actually. There's a reason for that, because I wasn't originally on the list to go to China and Hong Kong, but I picked up that injury in the January. I was trying to get fit, and I knew it wasn't right. I knew I was going to have to retire, but the surgeon hadn't told me. I'd got an appointment with him after that tour, and I said to Stuart, the caretaker manager, said, Stuart, I know I'm not on the list, but I really want to go, because I know I can't play in these friendlies or anything, but I think this is going to be my last trip as a footballer. He went, no, you'd be fine. But anyway, I went on it. So I that was the only reason, yeah. And I made the most of it.
Is that when you started smoking?
No, that was Colin Pates' fault. He used to have a little roll up, and he'd say, "You want a little roll up, Smudge?" But it didn't happen very often.
I just remember Stuart sat at the front of the bus like this, just watching all the lads coming in, and then on the flight to China, all the sick bags were out. You know, everyone was. They'd had a great night.
I'm not surprised Baldy was there.
Oh, hollow legs. He wouldn't have been sick though. I never saw him drunk.
I never saw him drunk.
He just could handle his.
I remember we used to go to Dover Street quite a bit. I remember Baldy with his goldfish bowl with brandy. I'm looking at him saying, this geezer's an absolute beast. I mean, like I said, Baldy was never, ever drunk. Well, you could never tell, because his legs were so bow anyway. You could never tell with Baldy.
Tony would be drunk after 2 pints, wouldn't he?
Yeah, but Baldy was special on the night out. Oh, he loved the sup. He loved to drink Baldy.
And Kevin liked to party as well, didn't he?
Oh, Kevin.
What was
Kevin
his
loved
drink?
to party.
What was his drink?
As Kev used to say, love a glass of shampoo, son.
Yeah, glass of shampoo.
Get the shampoo out. Yeah, Kev loved champagne, but Kev was, I'll have to put him up there as the best entertainment manager there is when it comes to football. Yeah, he was, He can organise a night out, and it'd be a good night out.
Yeah.
I mean, there'd be no complaints. There'd be no complaints after that night out. They'd be saying, Kev, when's the next one? He was that guy when it come to partying and enjoying the night.
That's right. Did he not organise 81 after 81? I think we went back to winners. After 89. After 89, we're like coming back on the coach after beating Liverpool up there, and it's about like 1 o'clock in the morning. We're coming down on the M1, and everyone's going, "Where do we go from here? We've got to go out." But nobody had organised anything. We didn't know where to go. Kevin said,
That's because we thought we were going to get battered.
Yeah. Kevin said, I've got a place. Leave it to me. On the bus, he's made a few phone calls. And like, we've got to, he said, Kev, where are we going? He said, no, don't worry. We'll get to Southgate. Follow Kev. He's taken us into this club called Winners. In
Bloody
Southgate.
snooker club.
Yeah, but that's where he took us. And that's where we had our entertainment. But Kev organised it at the last minute. And that was Kev, like to your point, Andy, that was Kev. He could like ring a few people, get things sorted out, make sure everybody was safe. And that was the thing, he made sure that everybody was okay. You know, he wanted everybody to have a good time. He weren't just organising something and walking off. He was like making sure that it was all... But that night we went to Winners. It was a snooker club, was it? But we had a good time in there, right? Yeah.
You remember it well.
I can remember, yeah.
Big round of applause. David Dein, Andy Cole,
Thank you.
Lee Dixon, Paul Davis, and Alan Smith.